Hey guys, welcome to February's edition of Quick Bits. There were two films this month that I watched in the month of February. So spoiler alert for these two films popping up on screen right now. Let's get started with Argylle. Matthew Vaughn's Argylle was a movie that had all of the actors possible. So let's start off with what did not work. They were very self-aware about some of the things that were super convenient. And just by adding a line of dialogue that's like, oh my gosh, that's super convenient. I can't believe that happened. Well, that might go over the head of some people. It doesn't go over the head of this guy. I also wasn't very happy with the blinking back and forth between Henry Cavill and Sam Rockwell. At the beginning, I was like, okay, this is kind of cool, something we haven't seen yet. And then it kept happening over and over again. And I was like, I did think that the brainwashing was a little bit of a cop-out. It made sense in the movie, but I don't know. I feel like they could have done something else. Like, you could have went with the amnesia route after, almost dying. And just make her think that she was an author before her hospital visit, and just not include the mind controlling. But I don't know. I feel like this movie would have been better as a TV show. There were just so many twists that they could have been used as cliffhangers for the end of some of these TV show episodes. Speaking about the twists, there were just so many that eventually you were expecting it. The thing about the twists, twists in general, is that you don't know when it's going to happen, and you're not expecting it. But between the parents not being real, Ellie being Argylle, Ellie turning bad, and then Ellie turning good, there were just so many twists that I just don't understand. The romance between Ellie and Aiden was just so random, in my opinion. There was nothing before them dancing to suggest that they liked each other. Finally, probably the biggest flaw about this movie is that none of the stuff that they did in this movie is even possible, physics-wise. I kept thinking, I'll give it a short leash because this is a fun family spy movie, but if it happens more than once, I'm going to point it out. The first 2/3 of the movie was great. Real spy stuff. But the last third of the movie, it was just very unrealistic. What was the gas bomb dance scene? It was very cringe. I did not like it whatsoever. But then right after the gas bomb scene, it was the oil spill, and they were skating on knives. That's not how physics work. You just can't put knives on the bottom of your skates and just oh, look, a shoe. They weren't even skates, they were shoes. Also, how does Ellie, oh my god. Also, how does Ellie shoot Aiden in the exact same spot that won't kill him instantly? This is a woman that refused to stomp on people's heads and jump onto a crash pad a couple of minutes ago. How does she go from never holding a gun in her life, that she thinks of, but never holding a gun in her life, to shooting someone else exactly in the heart, exact spot? But let's talk about what did work. I liked how they added the little transitions from the pages to the actual movie. The Hong Kong skyline, for instance, was an example of that. The humor in this movie was really fun and enjoyable. Most of the humor actually came through the mouths of Henry Cavill as Argylle and Ellie when they were talking to each other. I like that. They were really cool fight scenes. But I guess that's what you sign up for when you make Matthew Vaughn the director. The first couple of twists were fun, like I said. But they kind of got boring and repetitive. But I like the first couple twists. For example, when we find out that the director is her dad, amazing. I just did not expect that at all. And then to follow it up with her parents not being real parents, it was really cool. As for the Agent Argylle reveal earlier, I was like, what if she's the real Argylle? What if she's the Argyle? The real Argyle is the friends we made along the way. It was a joke, but it ended up being true, which I gotta give myself a pat on the back there. Pat on the back. Even though the twists were pretty cool, the acting was the best thing about this movie. Starting off with Bryce Dallas Howard, she really did a good job playing both an oblivious author and a super spy. Sam Rockwell really injected this movie with comedy. Without him, this movie would have been a lot less fun. Bryan Cranston was just amazing. He's such a good actor. I can't even write down what I think about him in this movie because I'm at a loss for words. He's one of those people that, like, they're stuck in the role. He's always in my brain as Walter White. He's always as Heisenberg. And when I see him in movies like this, I'm like, what are you doing? Like, this is not the movie for you. But it is the movie for him because he did an amazing job. Catherine O'Hara was just another actor in this movie that was just flat out funny. I don't think they could have casted a better person in this role. As for the grade, I'm going to give Argyle a 75 on the action scale. I think it was just good enough. Oh, I hit my mic. Sorry about that, guys. I think it was good enough to be a good movie, but there were a lot of scenes where I was like, eh. Alright, next up, Sony's Madame Web. And oh boy, do we have another flop alert for Sony. So I like with Argyle, I usually start with what didn't work and then end with what did. But just for this movie, because man, it's a great movie, Sony. Good job. I'm gonna save the stuff that is bad for the end. I swear this is gonna be a 30-minute video. So what did work? Not much, but there were still bright spots. This movie had great pieces. Just like it had the pieces. It could have been a good movie if they wanted to. You could definitely tell that there were some parts that were trending in the right direction. With that being said, I feel like the executives at Sony definitely wanted this movie to tie in with all of the other Spider-Verse crap that attached to Madame Web. For example, I think that the power set of Ezekiel Sims was pretty cool. Now, whether or not the writers used his powers correctly, we'll talk about that a little later. This, like I said, this is a fun movie when it wanted to be. I really like the dynamic of the three teenage orphans with all different traits. I think they really played off well of each other. Dakota Johnson's deadpan and dry humor fits this movie so well. It's a shame that the writers were more focused on the exposition and references. Oh, that's it. That's all I have for the good court category. I guess I have nothing else to add except for the negatives, and that's why you're really here, isn't it? So what didn't work? About 90% of the movie. As soon as the trailer dropped, I texted Brackton and I was like, oh, this is gonna be such a bad movie. I was like, this is gonna be a CW movie, but with the budget of what, 50 million? Oh my god, 80 million. Holy crap. Somehow this is even worse. Literally the first thing that the audience sees is the title card. It was lackluster. I was expecting so much more for the first 2 minutes of the movie, but I realized now I should have probably kept my expectations to a minimum. We weren't even 5 minutes into the movie and we already got exposition. Like, they weren't even wasting any time. Starting off with the Amazon sequence, there are these just little tiny cuts that make no sense. And I have no doubt in my mind that they're a result of rewrites. Sticking with the Amazon sequence, there were little tiny zoom-ins that were very noticeable. Like, it was just like simple, like, fan-made stuff like that. It didn't make any sense. You could definitely tell the difference between like that sequence, the first like 5-10 minutes of the movie, and then just the rest of the movie, just like an entirely different movie. It was so weird, but like I said, I think it might be a product of multiple writers bumping heads at each other, writing the same movie. They also messed up the backstory of Ben Parker. In like the comics, he was never a paramedic. He was a baker, electrician, veteran. Like I had to look this up. I didn't even know this off the top of my head, but it came to my surprise, he was never a paramedic. This is like the prime example of the writers trying to like bend this movie to fit with the comics and Spider-Man narrative. Okay, I'll move on. One moment in this movie where I was very confused is when Sims was talking to the woman in bed. He was like explaining all of his powers, like, oh, I went to the Amazon, how I got them, how he got them, where he got them, why he got them, why he hates them, why he loves them, and I'm just like, this lady could really give a The worst thing about this movie, if you could have guessed it by now, it was the references to the Spider-Man universe. It was not subtle at all. Braxton was like, they're just not subtle. This is not subtle at all. It was like, have you ever been shot in Queens? That's not the quote, but it was the extent of it. Ben Parker said that. And he obviously gets shot. Rip. The great power comes great responsibility line. That's not even said by Ben Parker. How does Ben Parker know? How does he learn that line? We'll talk about that more. I just keep that in mind. Let me tell you, this movie loved its sideways, upside down, backwards, 360 no scope camera shots. It was super unnecessary. There was no need. Only thing that came out of the shots was vertigo. I wanted to touch on Ezekiel Sims a little bit more. He's the literal definition of a forgetful villain. Like his whole motive for what he does was shown in 2 lines in when he was in bed talking to that random lady. Think about it for a second. He wants to kill 3 teenage girls for the sole reason that they kill him in the future, with which, spoiler alert, doesn't even happen. It wasn't even the girls. It was Madam Web. Like, oh, God. You could definitely tell that there were many lines that were just added in after, just the way they cut away from Sims when he was talking to this random lady in a chair that didn't really matter to the story at all. This movie tried its very best to make these 3 look like teenagers, but it's very difficult with these actresses specifically. That's all I'll touch on. I also wanted to point out that in the train station, when the cops started shooting and fighting Ezekiel Sims, there were so many cops that came out of the woodwork. Like, I found it very hard to believe that there were that many police officers right outside of the train station. They just kept piling in after one another. I feel like there was an insane imbalance of, like, even that is better writing than insane imbalance. That's better writing than Madam Web was. Insane imbalance of over-explaining and not explaining Cassie and Ezekiel powers. For example, that scene where they're talking to each other in their heads. How was that possible? Did they explain it and I just wasn't paying attention? Or did they just not care about how that worked? Probably. I don't even know. Stealing the spider and then getting a curse in return is like something that can be found in like Scooby-Doo or something. It was... driving an ambulance through a cement wall, number 1, not a good idea. Number 2, I cringed so hard when I saw that, and then it had to stall, and so that, yeah. I mean, yeah, I can't even. So, to summarize all of the negatives, this movie shows it's going to connect with the Spider-Man universe, but never does. We all knew that Mary was going to get cut off. She's like, oh, this is my new baby. This is, wah, God. Wah. This is, and then just cuts away. We all knew that was going to happen because it's illegal for Sony to do anything good. Ben Parker, like I said, the great power. That would have been a good example of tying this universe into the next universe. This movie gets bogged down by the horrible dialogue and constant need to relate the Spider-Man universe, plus the script changes didn't really help. And then finally, the 3 Spider-Women that were heavily advertised in every trailer, every single trailer. They were like, oh my gosh, Spider-Man, look at this, oh my gosh. They show up for 5 minutes in the entire movie. Like 2 at the beginning, 3 at the end. Once again, this movie promises some stuff, some cool stuff like the Spider-Women, like the great power comes great responsibility line, but leaves the most interesting parts for the sequel that will never happen. Unless Sony is insane. Which, I mean, they kind of are for making this movie in the first place, but as for the grade, I went back and forth with this, really. I finally, like, I wanted to give it an awful grade, but there were good parts. I mean, I can't, it's not this movie's fault for being so bad. It's the writers, it's Sony in general. Sony needs to go to Marvel. I mean, it just needs to be one collective universe. Let Kevin Feige do his thing. That's my 2 cents. Oh, by the way, I gave it a straight 50. Okay, I'm not gonna... So, here are the updated movie rankings post-February. The top 10 movies stay the same, with Everything Everywhere All at Once, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, and Oppenheimer rounding off the top 3. As for the action, Argyle makes the top 10, sliding in right before Aquaman 2 and right after Hunger Games. And as for Madame Web, one of the worst grades that I have given, slides in at the last movie on the action scale at a 50. And that's about it. I will see you guys at the end of March with my review of Dune 2 and other movies releasing in March. So, yeah.